essentially 5 things to recognize immature and high-risk development agencies and save money and time. We essentially divided everything into these building blocks, so the information would be digested a bit easier. And I think after the webinar, after the conference, we will be sharing the presentation with everyone who participated and stayed till the end. So the 5 pillars that we've outlined from our end, by working in the industry, speaking with clients constantly helping clients after they burned out with some other agencies. We know a range of agencies by ourselves, we know the competition, and at the same time we talk a lot with agencies like ours so we can mutually improve on certain processes and things and essentially provide more value to the marketplace. So the first thing is communication, then we have the pre-sale process, then we have maturity and immaturity of specialists, then we have delivery process structure and the discovery stage specifically. I would definitely cover this. And then we have contracts, which is also a pretty important part. And basically the goal of this first part of the webinar is to recognize high risk and immature development agency before you actually spend any money with them. So these topics, everything outlined here, is specifically going to be essentially for the clients, for people who want to develop a software product, so they can figure out if the agency that they're speaking or if they're like shopping around on the marketplace, if it's immature and high risk, and how to essentially avoid that, and how to understand that like the guys that you're talking to, they know what they're doing, they're not the first year on the marketplace, they won't screw up the project, and they're basically not lying as well in the communication and everything. So the first thing is communication and lack of it. There are some default business principles here, I would say. With engineers, it's often interesting because engineers, we have certain, I would say, direction of communication, since like we're often not like very social, and sometimes you might be able to find like a pretty good engineering team. They might be just like starting out or something, that want to have like a very good communication, but they are like very good engineers. Obviously you would only be able to check if they're engineers, but I would say it's more like a rarity, because with working on the products, especially on something bigger where you have like a lot of parties involved, where you have deadlines, where you have investors, where you have marketing teams waiting for the product to get launched and everything, lack of communication can really be an issue with the development team, lack of transparency, since you won't be able to solve the issues like in the fast manner. You won't be able to solve the issues on the go. So it's very huge risk. Only if you kind of like understand that you are keen on taking this risk, so you can often either pay more, or you can often spend a little bit more of your own time to manage the whole team and to micromanage the whole team. That might be an option, but in general, a lack of communication is a huge damage factor, and the bigger, the more important the project, the larger the factor it is. So the first thing is on time, being on calls on time, being with emails on time, being with everything that they like tell you about on time. And it's essentially connected with the second point of the whole thing, because remember that we're speaking not about the part where the product started already. We're speaking on how to essentially figure out and pick this development agency before you would actually be paying any money from your end. So the second thing is pretty important, is following promises. When someone is telling you, I'll get back to you at the end of the day, I'll send a proposal before 5 p.m. today, it's a very great thing if essentially someone is saying something like that, and if someone essentially complies to the promises that he or she provided from his end. I think if you are in the market for quite some time, if you had some experience, I think you had many cases where you were talking to people and they mentioned, yeah, I will send you a proposal tomorrow, I will send you the proposal by the end of the day and everything, and then you had to follow them up so that they can send you the proposal, or they were like rescheduling the calls and everything. That's might be like a red flag in the first place, but obviously we as people, we kind of collect all the red flags, and then based on this the amount of red flags, and the amount of green flags. And at the end of the day, we're making a decision on whether or not we should be moving forward or not. So following promises in the pre-sale process with like timings and everything is very, very important thing. It shows if the person has the business intelligence, if he's not in the in the first, like in the business for the first year. And yeah, it's a definitely important thing to take care of. Then professional email communication. There are some engineers who are basically just working on some kind of platforms, or like these are smaller teams, or like they're not native speakers, which is essentially the same thing with myself in the first place. The email should be definitely professional. It should be clear. It should has very, very good structure. It should be logical. It should not have like, it should not be like just like a huge chunk of text. So you need to invest time to figure out what the person actually meant. And it should in total make sense. Like, and you definitely would want to see like a clear signature on the email. And you definitely need to have a feeling that like, I like the way that these companies communicating with me. They're not arrogant. They have nice email. They're professional. They have a signature, and the email is solid. I can even forward the email to my partners, so I can even forward the email to my investors, and all these kind of things. So it's definitely should be professional, definitely should be on point. Then we have good and clear email structure, easy to digest. The same thing that I mentioned just now. You should really be able to understand. Yeah, it's better if it's like structure in different points, so you can clearly understand like this part, and that part, and you usually won't have any questions. And last but not the least is proper sales process. So some people can essentially be, I would say, not so interested to see the proper sales process implementation. Me, myself, as a business owner, if I'm trying to buy like certain service for the company, and I'm getting on the call with someone, and I see that the person is not leading the call, they don't hold the frame, they don't answer my questions properly, and they want me to lead despite the fact that I want to buy their service, it just doesn't make sense for me. And I see right away that if they have the immature sales process, then they probably do not provide a lot of value on the marketplace, because they probably did not make like a lot of profits that they can essentially reinvest to improve the value of the product or the service that they are providing. So it's definitely a sign of immature business as it is, and immature business is essentially always a risk. So I really like myself when I'm on the calls with essentially consultants and salespeople from other agencies, not only development agencies, but like marketing agencies, for example. I can really see a solid sales process. I can see that everything is being done to the book. Everything is like straightforward, transparent. It's correct. I can sometimes like throw some objections just personally, just to see how the salesperson essentially handles them. And if this is a good specialist, I understand from my end that the company can afford a nice, a nice specialist salesperson they can train. And that essentially means that probably they have everything on the delivery side figured out as well. So it definitely essentially adds more confidence for me. And as I think that's something that you should definitely be aware of as well. Obviously, there are some cases, especially with the engineers, where you won't be facing something like this, and in some cases, it might be like a benefit if you want to get someone cheaper, but who still might be like working nicely. But again, it's a very, very rare situation, and I would say like from the business point of view, with like larger budgets and everything for serious companies, it's usually like a red flag, and it's usually high risk when you're essentially talking with someone who is a provider and they don't have a proper like structured and sales process, and you basically don't see from your end that like the person that calls with you have done these type of calls like a couple thousand times already. Then we're moving forward to the pre-sale process. So it's everything about like the estimations, everything about figuring out the requirements of the product, everything about providing you with the like case studies, the relevant ones, the portfolio, personalizing the process to you. And it's something what you enter once you are at like deeper stages of the discussion of the project. So it's not basically just the intro, you're already actively speaking about the project with the provider. So in the first place, which is important, is personalized and customized. You should see and you should understand that the pre-sale of the pre-sale process of the company is really personalized and customized to your exact request. If you want to like disrupt the market with like very good like UI and UX, if you really care about how the testing is going to be done, if scalability issues are very important to you since you're planning to essentially spend huge marketing budgets and get a bunch of users on the product right away. The company, the provider that you are talking to, they should be able to customize and personalize the pre-sale process in order to essentially provide all the necessary information for you. And this is very, very important. Like often you would see some kind of like general pre-sale process, and like sometime like you want to develop a mobile application, but you see that like pre-sale process of the company, the case studies and the portfolio, they are often like just talking about web stuff. And you ask like, do you guys do mobile applications? And they say, yeah, it's like we're definitely doing them and everything. It often might be a red flag, because in the pre-sale process, the team should have a range of developed documents with the overview of the processes, with the presentations of the processes, with the presentation of the expertise in your industry, usually with the case studies similar to something that you want to develop. The more information that the team would provide to you, the better would essentially be, since it essentially adds like the highest level of trust and highest level of confidence. So yeah, this is the second point that I've mentioned already. Relevant case studies also mentioned about that. That's pretty important. They also should have them on the website, since often companies, they would just white label and they would just send the case studies of some team that they are outsourcing to, which also often a risk. Good presentation structure, presentation skills. It also shows that like people you're talking to, they're not for the first day on the marketplace. They have the information prepared, and the only reason of why they should have presentation skills, good presentation skills, is that it would show that they've been doing it for some time. They were proven on it. They know what are they doing. So they've done it a lot. They've done a bunch of projects already, which obviously decreases the business risk and risk of the product being unsuccessful from the development point of view. Then we have maturity and immaturity of specialists you're talking to. That's something that you can screen on the like personal level, on soft skills level. How confident is the person that you're talking to, how they really believe in the service of the company, how they believe in themselves. And it would often tell a lot, since as humans, we essentially take and understand a lot of information from the body language of the person that we're talking to. And it's a very important and interesting thing to essentially focus on. So the people that you're talking to, they should be confident, they should be professional, so they should behave, look, and implement stuff as professionals as well, not arrogant, ready to consult and help. So they should not like be looking down on you because like you don't understand some like technical stuff or things like that. They should not be trying to essentially lie to you, since they understand that like you don't understand these things and they can take advantage of you. That's definitely not something that is essentially interesting when speaking with like any development providers. And then they should definitely be proficient in the topic, or at least willing to learn. So at least willing to learn, that's also a high risk. But essentially, you always, like as a business person, you're always considering the risks and reward and the money, the amount of money that you essentially investing into the whole relationship with the provider. So it essentially depends on the task, and it depends on the various variables that you have on your end. Professional in the topic, it's very interesting in Web3 space, in blockchain as well. You should, like, when you're speaking with consultants, with like engineers on the end of the provider, they should really be keen and interested in the topic of the product. It's like, I won't say it's a necessary thing to have, since like essentially with each like custom software development project, you can always divide things into very small pieces and then be able to then essentially be able to build them from scratch, even if engineers they don't know the industry very well. But it's definitely a plus. And speaking of the blockchain and Web3, you should definitely be talking with the engineers who are very keen on the space. They know a lot of projects, they know how the whole thing works, they own crypto by themselves, they're investing and all those kind of things. Then the delivery process structure and discovery stage. So there are a range of companies on the market who would be jumping on the development of the product right away and just like providing you with like estimate and committing to the estimate just when they're talking to you before you actually spend something. And it's a huge red flag, actually. It often would show that the company is not mature enough in their processes, because essentially any company can be able to provide you with the final and fixed price estimate and commit to it after like 4 hours of calls or something. They need to do the like thorough investigation of the product. They need to understand all of the functionalities. They need to understand how the whole thing works, and they need to understand what you essentially want to achieve with the product. And if they don't have like a discovery or software specification development process internally inside the company, that would often show that, it's just probably like a small team, or if it's like a larger company, they don't have like these processes internally, so they basically don't know how to work with the type of the product that you would like to build. So with the technical specification development and the discovery process stage, you should definitely have like the business analysts, designers, and solutions architect and project managers on the end of the provider. So they would really be able to jump deep into the product. So they would really be able to understand what are the things that you actually want to have done, and what essentially, and they need to be able to consult you on different functionalities, different features, essentially in connection with your target, with the product, with the budgets, with the timelines, with the market that you're going into, with the competition that you might have at this stage of the development of the product. So it's really a range of things to take care of on this product. Fixed priced, it's a red flag for custom projects often. If it's a fixed price that's cheap, like if we're speaking about like if you're talking to some type of an agency which has done something similar to what you want to do, they have a name in the field, and they're offering something for like a higher price than everyone else who is offering the same thing to you. Like, let's say like you're getting quotes 150K, 200K, 250K, and all these companies, they're agile. And then you have this one player who is providing you the estimate of 1 million and 1.5 million. They might actually know better what are they doing, and they might be able to essentially commit to the time frames with that type of budget and really develop the best product in comparison to all of the companies. But in general, I would say that it's very rare case. It's something that serves better for like larger brands, like Fortune 500 companies and people like that. Essentially, with like smaller custom software development projects where we're speaking about under 1 million budget for the development, fixed price is always red flag, because it's a massive project, it's months of development, it's a huge team, and they would either lowball themselves and not deliver the whole thing at all, and they were not planning to deliver the whole thing at all in the first place, or they will make like a lot of profits and essentially overcharge and overprice the whole thing. So definitely something to focus your attention on as well. And then essentially contracts, I think it's last but not least in the first part of the webinar, the fifth point. So contract is something that is pretty interesting and pretty important as well. Often from the contract, from the type of the contract that the company sent to you, you can understand if this is something that just was developed, that just was downloaded from rocketlawyer.com. And if it's just something like quick, and if it basically not suits very well to your type of project or to your market or to your industry, being in the niche and being in the industry as a business owner, you would often understand what type of contract you're using, maybe with other providers, or what type of contracts like your competition or your partners have with the providers in the niche. So you would often see and understand if the company that you are working with is mature enough to work with you, since usually it's better to have companies as providers who are essentially slightly smaller than you, but not too much, since if they're very, very small, you would often end up in this situation when they just don't have internal processes to manage larger projects. They don't know how to work with the companies like yours. And yeah, it's also high risk, and it also usually would end up not in a very favorable situation, I would say. Not general from the web mentioned, suits your business size and other vendors mentioned, suits your location and jurisdiction mentioned, no mistakes or issues made. Yeah, that's a huge point. The provider that you're talking to should have a proper legal department on the end. If it's like CEO of the company who's changing some things on the contract and everything, depending on your size, obviously, but yeah, usually like larger, more mature companies. And if the company is mature, it's obviously a lower risk to work with the company. So they definitely should have like legal people on their end that are professional, that know what they do, and that don't make mistakes on the contracts with the invoices or different terms.